Today, the United Nations top court is delivering a landmark ruling on the legal implications for countries in the fight against climate change.
Is it something you live day to day, and so it's an existential problem for people for young people in countries like Kiribati and Tuvalu and Marshall Islands. They're witnessing the events of climate change every high tide.
What started out as a 6-year student-led campaign from the Pacific Islands has grown into one of the most significant rulings on climate change from the International Court of Justice. The ruling is expected to have a consequential impact on climate action worldwide. For a closer look at what we can expect, I am joined by Barnali Chaudhry, law professor at Osgoode Hall Law School. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So the ICJ is expected to answer 2 questions today. First, what obligations countries have to address climate change? Second, what are the legal consequences and what will those be if countries fail to do that? What are you expecting to see today?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. We're not really sure which way the court is going to go. One possibility is going to be that they decide that the requirements that are already found in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, which you may be familiar with, are not enough, and that countries are going to have to do more. Another controversial point that may be raised is whether countries are going to have to provide reparations to countries that have been affected by climate change. And that could mean compensation. So, for example, Canada could be required to provide compensation to countries like Vanuatu for the climate change repercussions that they are suffering.
But how would this be enforced?
Well, there is no real enforcement mechanism. Everything that is done at the international level is done politically, but the International Court of Justice is a very prominent organization. When they speak, countries and courts listen. So even if Parliament, for example, was to ignore everything that the ICJ says today, we will probably see the repercussions in court cases and also maybe at other international levels.
This case is being described as a David versus Goliath battle. Why is it being framed that way?
Yeah, so as you mentioned in your intro, the case was originally brought by a group of students, and then it was later spearheaded by the government of Vanuatu, which is the lead applicant in this case. At the hearing level, though, we found that there was a clear disparity in the arguments between a number of different what we call developing countries led by Vanuatu and a number of other countries that are really the carbon emitter kind of countries. So it ended up really being a dispute between the Vanuatus of the world versus the United States, Canada, and so on.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that specifically. The big emitters, there's a handful of the world's top emitters that are responsible for more than half of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So we're talking China, the US, India, European Union, Russia, and Brazil, contributing to more than 60% of these emissions. Canada, by the way, ranked as the 11th highest emitter, just behind Saudi Arabia. What could a ruling like this mean for these countries?
So the 2 things that I guess Vanuatu really wants and these arguments were put forward to the court is one is reparations. So that could be in terms of compensation. It could be in terms of if a government has subsidized fossil fuels, that would be a requirement then to give reparations to countries that are affected by it. And the second thing is that there could be legal requirements for governments of countries to impose, I guess, regulations on fossil fuel companies.
In Canada, we recently passed Bill C-5 into law, which allows major national interest projects like pipelines, railways to skip past some environmental regulations. How could this ruling affect that?
Yeah, so we've already seen some challenges to Bill C-5, and certainly this case could bolster those claims. There's already been a successful ruling at the Ontario level challenging climate change regulations that were rolled back by the government, and that was found to infringe charter rights, so definitely those kinds of cases could be brought as well. The Bill C-5 also has an implementation phase, which means that the government is probably going to be required to implement Bill C-5 in accordance with whatever the ICJ says today.
Barnali Chaudhry, thank you for your time. We do appreciate it this morning.
Thank you so much.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.